All right, good morning, everybody. We will go ahead and call this meeting of the Assembly's Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee of the whole meeting
PJ, good
to
see you
order.
again.
If you are on the phone, can you please
I
mute?
know.
You're going to be getting tired of our.
If you're on the
I
phone, can
have
you please
reams of
mute?
paper I filled up just with
Mia? All right. Today's April 18th. We're noticed from 11 to noon. We'll start with introductions.
Mark Littlefield.
Karen Bronga,
Zach Johnson.
Meg Zalatel on the phone. Mr. Martinez,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Myers,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Voland.
Happy to be here.
Great. Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
All right, we are going to jump right in. We are not going to discuss any unfinished business right now. So we're going to go into the dividend payment proposed in 1Q by the administration and turn over to Mark Corsentino from AWU. We have about 10 minutes for this item, and then we're going to have to move on to catch the other ones. All right, Mark.
Thank you. Mark Corsentino, General Manager for AU. I think at a high level, there'll be a lot of, I'll be brief. At a high level, there's some first quarter budget revisions that are normal that get put into place. This started in late February. They're limited to net zero changes, typically are things that you didn't know about during the original budget cycle back in August. And so at the high level, as the General Manager, I have an obligation to take care of certain things, follow the laws, and make sure I at least propose budgets that take care of the utility's sustainable health and financial well-being in the long run. So the second two sheets are just show what the changes were that were proposed. The regulatory requirements are the things that just are in alignment with our equity management plans that we file with the RCA. In my mind, they're required. They make us whole. And it's particularly only on the water side, we really asked for the increase, which was in chemicals, because we had bid openings that came in late and we have to provide chemicals to our water treatment plants. And then we were notified in January of this year that our rebates, our electrical rates will go up because the rebate that we have been getting is going away. The rest of this stuff, I mean, you don't normally see all this stuff during the actual appropriation phase. Some of these are non-appropriated items, but they are real items that we have to account for. And so they're there. That's what they're there for. And I'll leave it at that. There was, at a high level, there was a push to ask for a larger dividend. And there's questions on notification in collaboration with me that had not been going on initially. They have since been going on. So the next slide, which actually you have to go through the next couple slides. There's the budget proposals that we requested. You can skip that one, go to the next one, and then the next one. And you can skip this one too. The message here was there's questions. There's, Sharon's new. It's a new process, new person, and communication takes a while to start up. It's since happened, so you can skip this one as well. But at the end of the day, the big one that concerns me, and there's a lot of topics on this, the water utility is in some ways got some substantial risk ahead of it. The new, ironically, the day after this was laid on the table, the new PFAS regulations were finalized by the EPA for PFAS. Now, I think it's important for me to note to the community and everyone else that Anchorage's water supply is pristine and PFAS-free through our active water sources. But there's a key word there, active water sources. We have an abundant supply of water, which is a good thing, through Clutton, Ship Creek, and about a dozen wells. And the PFAS regulations have gotten more stringent. The technology to test for this PFAS compounds are more specific. And so what we tested for in 2015, we never found any PFAS compounds in our water supply sources. And last year, about mid-year last year, we've tested for them because they drafted proposed PFAS regulations. And lo and behold, 3 of our 12 wells actually showed up with hits. Most of them were below the proposed levels, but nevertheless, they're there. That tells me that they're there, they could grow, and it's a threat to all our water resources. So at least a couple of those we took offline. They're no longer active water sources. And they could be if we spend money and do treatment, find other methodologies. So what that means is we've lost about 10 million gallons of water production, which is half of our average day supply. Now, that's a supplemental backup source, so it's not a huge risk yet, but it certainly could be. It limits our ability to operate. Flip side, it also is a sign that we could see this stuff other places. The United States at large is struggling with these regulations because I've heard numbers of 80% of water supplies in the United States are at risk and have problems with this. And so There's several years to get this implemented and figure out all that information, but in some respects, you're behind the curve because if you've got to meet regulations, hard numerical regulations in a couple of years, you're behind the curve because construction projects don't happen overnight. They take time, identification of projects, planning, studies. So we're behind the curve and we're already putting in our CIP and CIB's money to do this, which could be tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Compound that with the fact that a Clutha water supply, in any case where our river is being rewatered, puts our raw water supply at an increased risk. Now, it doesn't mean we can't do any of these things. It's just there's mitigation factors that have to be played, and most mitigation is going to cost dollars and cents. So there's financial challenges. So add that on the fact that a larger dividend has a risk that's undetermined yet. We're working that out. And then as a result of that, there's some proposed dividend language changes, which I'm generally supportive of, but I haven't seen it all. I've had a chance to digest it. So there's a lot of parts moving right here that are concerning to me. And
Can we kind of get to the bottom line?
You bet.
So what I think I'm hearing is that you have some risk that you want to mitigate, particularly around water regulation changes. I saw an article in the New York Times the day after we had that conversation at budget or at the work session. And so you would like to keep the dividend for now, the $4 million. Is that
Well, no,
accurate? Is that one reason?
Well, the original dividend proposed back in August was 1.5 million.
So
The request is to
reduce,
make it 5.6 million. So
Okay.
that's a $4.1
so change,
million increase.
so not do the increase.
Well, I got to be careful what I say here. We're working that issue now. There could be some increase, but it's a process, and we're in deliberations with the administration now.
Okay, I have another question though related to the dividend. So it's your net income position. There's a lot of grant proposed projects also as part of 1Q.
Yep.
If those grants didn't come through or come through at the amounts you were hoping for, would that money be available? Like, would that $4 million be available to make those projects go if necessary?
If we didn't have those grant dollars, we'd have to fund that through equity, and the equity comes from a dividend would take away from our equity.
Okay, great. Any other questions? If there's more you want to add, but I really wanted to kind of jump in and see if members are getting their questions because we have budget amendments due tomorrow. Yep, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. So you might have already covered this. What, I guess just in prior years, is this typical, I guess, or well, let me back up. Were you consulted about this, this budget amendment, essentially this increase of the dividend?
No, but I've since communicated with the administration, and we're working out the issues. I think the important thing to note too is for historical purposes, some 40 of our 50 years, actually 41 of our 46 years, A has been under a dividend restriction. The ASU, the sewer utility, is still under a dividend restriction. It's because of our financial metrics and our health. The RCA doesn't trust the MOA. It's very clear in their dividend orders when they lifted it that says, we don't trust you. Your finances haven't been good, and we're going to watch this closely. One of the major comments they made is if you provide a dividend higher than what you recommend, that there could be a dividend restriction back in place immediately. So we have to be very careful on the dividend. It was only lifted in 2019. We didn't do a dividend in 2019 because at the time the administration thought it was too quick. We've done modest dividends since then. This is a 300% increase over what we'd recommended. So could it be done? I don't know yet. It's potential. We're working things out. There's going to be a lot of deliberations that have to occur. And then the RCA is going to look at this. We have to report this to the RCA annually, and they have noted they will take note of dividends that we provide and act accordingly.
Thanks. And as a new member, I really appreciate the look back and kind of what's typical, because that's what's hard to sort out sometimes. Thank you.
One more question before we're out of time is, have you ever had your dividend change at first quarter? Has it always been set in the typical budget fall process?
Well, the utility dividend per code, the dividend distribution memo is submitted during first quarter, and it was submitted, and there's been a change. So there's always a negotiation during the budget season, which we did negotiate, and it would actually even change during the budget cycle. That's appropriate. This is just a last minute change in my mind that came without consultation. That being said, we're working it out. There's new people, new processes, and we've got to iron those challenges out, and we will.
Okay, one more question, Mr. Constant.
Thanks. Mr. Cortantino, do you have any knowledge of if a dividend has ever had to be clawed back because of an order from the RCA?
Sure. I mean, MLP in 2015, the Mayor Dan Sullivan, they're overdrawing, the MOA was overdrawing dividends from MLP at a time where their equity impaired because they were spending a lot of money in like Plant 2A. And so the dividend was certainly taken away at that point in time from the MOA. They were on a dividend restriction from 2015 until they were sold.
Okay, well,
So, okay, I think that's a slightly different thing, but it's important to note that you're saying they were not allowed to go forward, but has there ever been a clawback that you're aware of?
No, they only act based on our actions.
Okay, thanks. It's still worthy of note.
okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Corsentino. Of course, members, if you, Ms. Bronga.
If I diligently read this paperwork, I will understand where this dividend goes or,
Maybe, but you can certainly reach out to me if you have.
okay, I'll
questions.
reach out to you.
Yes, that was what I was just going to say. Thank you, Mr. Corsentino. I'm sure members will reach out to you if they have more questions. All right. Port, please come join us. So next on our agenda, we have status of Port Terminal 1 and upcoming contracts. I'm going to let the PAMP director and the port drive this. There's actually two different presentations. And let's make sure we're done by approximately 20 to the hour, so we leave enough room for solid waste services. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Once again, Eric Adams, Jacobs Port PAMP Manager. We have Safeworth Shaw. I guess I'd ask Allison and Bennett, are you guys on the line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
As you guys are aware, the MOA entered into an agreement with an outside law firm to help craft the contract for T1 to minimize the risks. And Allison and Bennett are the two outside attorneys who have been supporting us. And so with that, I'm going to ask Allison or Bennett to run through the slides that you see in front of you, and you guys please feel free to ask questions. But this is the best way to prevent the muni from any additional contract risk on the project. So go ahead, Allison.
Good morning, everyone. This is Allison Ashford from South Shore, and as you know, I'm joined by my partner, Bennett Greenberg. Given the short time frame, I'll take the lead on outlining our presentation, but Bennett may jump in from time to time. So based on the first slide, our task was to prepare and finalize 3 contracts for the development of the new Terminal 1. The first contract is a construction contract for the development of the new terminal between the municipality and the construction contractor. The second agreement is a crane agreement for the procurement and installation of the cranes to be installed in the new Terminal 1. That contract is between the municipality and the crane procurement and installation contractor, Matson Navigation Company. And the third agreement is a tri-party agreement, which we refer to as an interface agreement between the municipality, the construction contractor, and Matson. And the purpose of this agreement is to facilitate cooperation and an interface between the two contractors' scopes of work, as well as establishing a mechanism for the allocation of risk between the two contractors. So turning to the next slide, in our presentation, we'll focus on the 2 biggest risk items in any construction contract, those being cost and time. For the construction contract, the cost aspect is dealt with as follows. The construction contractor's contract price is a fixed price comprised of lump sum items and allowance items. For the lump sum items, we have imposed on the contractor the risk of reviewing the drawings prepared by the design and engineering team and deciding how many materials and the associated labor they require to price to complete the work. The reason for including allowance items is because neither the municipality nor the contractor can be sure of the extent of work or materials required for various components of the work. And to avoid the contractor including a larger than necessary contingency in the fixed price, we will instead pay them the actual costs of the work and materials for these components. The unit rates that apply to the allowance items are fixed, except where the quantity of the work or material is less than 75% or more than 125% of the estimated quantity for that work or material. And for completeness, the estimated quantities have been determined by the engineer. So to confirm, with respect to the allowance items, we will only pay the contractor the actual quantities, and the contract price will be adjusted up or down depending on what the actual work or materials are when compared to the estimated work or materials. Turning to the next slide, this slide deals with the other critical area of risk, which is schedule. With respect to the issue of time for performance of the work, we'll address both the construction contract and the crane agreement. So under the construction contract, there will be two scopes of work, scope of work number 1, scope of work number 2. As is typical for construction contracts, the construction contractor, will be responsible for the municipality's damages as a result of unexcusably delayed performance. Conversely, if the contractor completes scope of work number 1 only by July 15 in the year of 2027, which is a hard and fixed date not subject to adjustment, then it will be entitled to a one-off $1 million bonus payment. The intention behind this bonus payment is to incentivize the contractor to complete scope of 1 as early as possible and to reduce the risk, the potential for interference with overall port operations. Turning to the crane agreement next, pursuant to the crane agreement, Matson will commence the installation of the cranes once the construction contractor has completed its scope of work number 1. The crane installation work will then continue to occur while the construction contractor completes scope of work number 2. So there will be a lot of parallel work occurring in that period. Similarly to the construction contract, Matson will be responsible for the damages incurred by the municipality as a result of Matson's unexcusably delayed performance. However, any impact of the municipality in terms of its acts or omissions on Matson will also be compensable to Matson, but subject to a negotiated cap or limitation on the municipality's liability. Turning to the next slide, this is the third agreement that we were required to prepare for the project, the interface agreement. So in light of the overlap, both physically and temporally, of both the construction contractors and Matson's scope of work, we have proposed that the two contractors enter into an interface agreement with the municipality. Broadly, the intent of the interface agreement is to establish a framework and protocol for the two contractors to coordinate their work, given the fact that they are going to be working on the one project site for a substantial amount of time. It also requires each of the contractors to be directly responsible to the other for the impacts of delays that they cause to the other contractor's scope of work. So as part of this framework, each contractor has to reimburse the other for damages caused by their respective delays. Where the municipality has acted or omitted to act in a way that causes one contractor to be delayed, that subsequently impacts the other contractor, then this allocation of risk is dealt with in their respective construction contract and crane agreement. Turning to the final slide, to give the Assembly an idea of the timing of finalization and execution of these three agreements, the intention is that the three agreements be signed simultaneously on the same day. And so to effect that, the municipality will, once it's selected the preferred construction contractor, proceed to finalize the construction contract. In parallel, the municipality will also finalize the crane agreement with Matson. And then also in parallel, at exactly the same time, the construction contractor, Matson, and the municipality will finalize the interface agreement.
All right.
And that's the end of our presentation.
Great. I have myself in the queue. I have a couple of questions, and then I invite other members. So I guess starting with the last slide first, we're going to be going out to bid for the construction on T1. Is it going to be stated in the RFP that these are going to be required?
Yes, they are stated in the RFP. Sorry, Allison, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yes, they are in the RFP.
And were they stated in the pre-qualification so that those who got right, because we did a pre-qualification period, were they on notice that something like this might be required?
Yes, they are on notice that there'd have to be working with the crane Matson contractor and us that something like this would occur. The exact details weren't 100% finalized at the time, but
Okay. And then back at slide 3 about the incentive payment, I guess I would like, and we don't need to discuss it today, but I would like Ben to take back kind of how that's allowed under code that we pay for an incentive, and how we can fund that incentive under our various funding pots that are being used on T1. Second, I guess, whether or not there are other governments doing incentive payments. It's right. I get it in the private sector, but like now we're translating it to the public sector. And I just want to know and understand more about how that works in a government application. Then my last question is, what's the approval or Assembly's role with regard to these agreements outside of approving the contract for T1?
so outside of approving the contract for T1, you would have to also look at the crane agreement and the interface agreement, because it will have to authorize somebody on the muni's behalf to enter into those agreements. So I believe it would be the city manager who would have to sign those agreements coming up.
Okay, so the manager would sign, but we would authorize signature, or they would be signed by the manager and then come to us? Mr. Bowman.
Through the chair, the framework that we'd kind of been working under was that they'd be submitted as a package to the assembly, the contract, the interface.
Okay,
and
so
the crane
full
agreement.
package. Okay.
We don't sign it, sorry, through the chair. We don't sign until the assembly sees it. And I'll brief you, in the next presentation, I tell you about the timelines when the assembly is going to see it and the anticipated actions that you guys will need to do. That's in the next presentation.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions about this agreement structure, Ms. Brawley?
Yeah, thanks. I really only understand this at a surface level, but on my mind is the fact that we're currently in a lawsuit with MARAD. Granted, that was a different project, different situation. So I'm just, it seems like, for example, this this interface agreement seems to be kind of trying to protect the muni's interest or the public interest in that, right? If there's issue, I guess if you could just talk about kind of how we're essentially structuring this to avoid the risk of a repeat situation, or a situation where where there's an error that was not in the municipalities, and then we are ultimately on the hook to deal with that. And sorry for the not great construction of that question.
No, this is Bennett Greenberg. I can speak to that since I've been involved for the last 10 or 11 years in the litigation with MARAD concerning the failed attempt to construct the port. That was a very different agreement, to say the least. And it really, in terms of the papering of that contract, it was not at all a robust contract. But here we have a very robust contract. And what we're trying to do through this interface agreement is not avoid liability. Because as Allison said, the municipality will take responsibility for any acts that and omissions that it causes to either Matson or the general contractor. But what the interface agreement does is not take responsibility for impacts that the general contractor causes Matson, or that Matson causes the general contractor. So we're just really trying to put responsibility for delays with the party that causes those delays. And we think that's the best way to deal with this agreement, because for the most part, the municipality is going to be pretty passive during this project. And as Allison pointed out, the crane agreement and the construction agreement are going to be performed simultaneously. So it's those two parties that really need to cooperate. And therefore, we think it makes the most sense for them to take responsibility for their acts that they cause, the impacts they cause to the other. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And again, this is really just surface level for me, but I appreciate the attention to protecting those interests because I think that's going to be really important, especially at this scale.
Thank you, Ms. Brawley. Mr. Littlefield?
I may have missed it, but you asked the question where the incentive comes from and how can we do this? And it may be the second part of this presentation, but I didn't get an answer to that, or maybe I missed it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Littlefield. I asked if they could take it offline so that they could give us an analysis under code, how we could do that and what payments we could. I figured that was maybe a little more complex than in the time we had. Okay. Any other questions on the agreements? Yes.
To the chair, just want to itemize the interface agreement, just so you guys understand why this is key, right? As we begin the continued construction of the dock, the first 2/3 of the dock needs to be completed, right? If you chop it up into thirds, the first 2/3 of the dock needs to be completed by mid 2027, and that allows enough time for Matson to come in, ship their cranes from the manufacturer where they're getting at, install them on the first 2/3, commission them, and then we take off working on scope of work 2, which is the last third of the dock. And the interface agreement is trying to limit the damages the muni sees if Matson doesn't deliver within that time frame or the contractor doesn't deliver in that time frame. So it's a risk mitigation standpoint because we have a short window where that can occur. So just to give some clarity to that.
Thanks. It might be helpful as we move forward towards taking those up, how those, if we had a timeline, kind of how those agreements interplay with the timeline. I hear it conceptually, but seeing how it works against that kind of delivery date, how you're coming up with that incentive date, I think would be really helpful to see. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next presentation.
Thank you, Allison and Bennett. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, this is just standard cover page. Next slide, please. Agenda T1 contract. We kind of talked about the meat of it. Then we'll talk about upcoming contracts as well to support the PAMP. So T1 items, construction contracts, bids due middle of July, EOC briefing, August, September timeframe. That's kind of when I'm looking to sit here and present these items to you guys. Goal would be August if I can, but as you work, there's 3 agreements we need to work out, so that take a little bit of time. No later than September EOC. I plan to be here.
So I think on this one, what my request will be is if the introduction of whatever the items are going to be can at least give us 2 meetings before the action drop dead date, right? If it's introduction, public hearing, and you need action that day, I think that's a short time window. So if you can roll it back 1 more meeting, knowing that you've got a notice to proceed target. So if you can roll it back from there and we can start to make sure we're getting enough time, we will make time in this committee or work sessions, but introduction of the final documents, right, and a decision 2 weeks later can feel really short for us. Mr. Bowman.
Just to clarify, you mean 2 assembly meetings, or do you mean 2 EUOC meetings?
Assembly meetings. So,
Gotcha.
right, introduction, and then have 2 more meetings that we have time to hold public hearings, stop, think, all those great things. Thank you.
Through the chair, so based on that timeline, I need to make sure I'm here in August, is what I'm hearing. I do my best to make sure that happens. And then the goal is notice to proceed to contractor in 2024. So some of the things that I want to just brief the assembly on that you'll be seeing the PAMP program coming back for year after year until T1's done is we need to extend the designer record contract for construction support of T1. Plan to bring that to you guys in July and August, the EOC meeting briefing. It'll be a small amount, but each year during construction, we need to make sure we have the designer record on board to support any questions that come on. And so my plan is to, we have an estimate right now. We're just going through the final QC checks of it. And then each year I'd bring it to you saying, hey, this is designer 1 support for T1 and request that authorization. And so that will be upcoming each year over the life of T1. Next slide, please. Upcoming PAMP contracts that I bring to you guys is special inspection contracts, multi-year, multi-vendor. As we get into the construction of T1, we need some special inspections. And so that will be coming up in the May EOC meeting. We're actually in the procurement phase of it right now and going through the selection process. Existing admin transient building, should be out for bid today. Demo contract, we'll bring that to you guys in the June EOC meeting. The T2 design, I know we're still working through that, but we have the RFP ready for release depending on the outcome of the May EOC meeting. And then we're working on identifying a source of funds based on the width that you guys determine on that. But it's ready to be released, no action until you guys approve the width. And then right now we're in the middle of the tsunami study and negotiations as well. And that will be upcoming as well.
So on T2, just as a notice to members, that EEOC meeting is scheduled for May 16th, but on that Friday, we set a special one specifically to take up port items because they're two big ones. And then on that, you said you'd like to get our final approval, knowing we can't take action in a committee. That will put you to the first meeting and we have a big, it'll be the 21st. Okay. So we can just kind of work together to figure out the timing on an item, knowing that we won't hear it until the addendum deadlines and all of those things happen, but we can work together on that. We've done it before.
One of the items that I know I'm working with Alden and his team to identify the source of funds because there would be additional revenue bonds most likely needed to go out for the T2 design. I believe we're working that out. I'll let Alden speak to that when we get there.
So as we get ready to have that conversation about the release of revenue bonds in lieu of using other fund sources, it'd be really great to kind of keep a chart of like, what do we have in our piggy bank and what's slated for what, so that when we are issuing revenue bonds, we know we're kind of only in that posture. We don't have another fund source available. Okay, great. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, on the question of revenue bonds, just to be clear, so I know that it's the port has its own funding right through the tariffs. Does that still relate? That is still under the full faith and credit of the municipality, isn't that right? Or is it completely separate? Yeah, I guess where I'm going is I just want to understand, is there any implications for the ACFR situation? Because I know there's been discussion about holding off on some bonds, but I know that the port is a separate entity, so I just wanted to understand that. Thank you, Alden.
So revenue bonds are through the port. Port has its own bond ratings. And actually, we're getting second and third ones because of the TIFIA loan application. So all of the ratings of the port are independent of them. They have nothing to do with the general obligation bonds nor the favorite topic that you mentioned that I don't want to repeat.
Okay, thank you. So that's great because it means that these other pieces will not hold up this process. Thanks.
Right. Any other questions about the port right now? Lots moving, very exciting. I'm really excited to see a potential completion date on T1. That's something I'll mark on my calendar. So, all right.
Ms. Valco, I do have a
Yep, please
question.
go ahead.
So I believe we have an item on the agenda relating to the PCT. And so I'm hoping we can get a little info on that project.
Do you want to take a minute and update? It's the flushing.
Oh, the line flush, yeah. On your agenda on Tuesday night will be 2 sole source contracts to put in place all the pieces, parts we need to complete the line soaking exercise for the new fuel lines on the PCT. One is to Marathon Petroleum to provide the fuel for the exercise, and the other is with Udelhoven to manage the whole process. There's still a little bit of small construction that has to take place, connections to the stripping lines of the new petroleum lines that will fall under their responsibility, as will managing the overall completion of the process. Part of the skill set required is to be able to do this, isolating the petroleum lines that need to be involved from the ones on POL 1 and POL 2, so we can actually keep bringing tankers in while we're doing this exercise. That requires an individual or a company that understands how the POV works. Udelhoven has that skill set. So, we're anxious to put these in place, and that will now put us on a timeline to completion and get the PCT open for the tankers.
Any follow-up?
I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah. So is this related to the issue, I think that came up last year where we were not basically able to use the new petroleum component of the PCT?
Yes, yes, it is. There's identified to us by the petroleum users was an American Petroleum Institute, a recommended procedure that they wanted to see done before they would use the PCT for petroleum. That is what, that's what we're accomplishing with this. We got a little extra time to put all the right pieces in place when we found those cracked valves. Now all the cracked valves are replaced. The last piece of work that has to get done now is those connections of the new lines to the stripping pumps. And once that's done, then we can get this done in short order. So I'm excited about getting this behind us.
Yeah, thanks. So then, general timeline, assuming everything goes as planned, kind of when would a ship be able to actually offload?
I'm hoping by the end of July, and I'm going to underpromise, because I've gotten in trouble not doing that in the past.
Okay. I think you are all off the hot seat. Thank you. That was easy, huh? Do we have someone here from Solid Waste Services? All right. I can't see behind the pillar. If I had X-ray vision, that would be amazing. All right. So next we have citywide cleanup program changes and proposals, Solid Waste Services.
Okay, good afternoon, Assembly members. I'm not contagious, just for the record. Okay, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation about spring cleanup, because SWS has really taken a look since last year to reimagine and really try to focus our resources in a way that benefits the city as a whole. And so by doing that, what we were thinking to do is I'll kind of lay out the land for you now. Citywide cleanup, we've always actively supported the Chamber of Commerce citywide cleanup program. And so then in addition to the orange bags, we take all of those orange bags for a free dump. And we started to evaluate, we did a presentation last fall, I think it was, where we talked about all the free programs that we were doing and trying to evaluate that. In looking at all of the over $1 million that we support the city with, we wanted to reimagine it and put those resources in a different way. So besides the fact that we will continue to support the Chamber of Commerce with their citywide cleanup in the orange bags, we'll continue to do that. The bags can come in, the orange bags can come in for free for that week of Spring Cleanup Week, which starts May 4th, I believe, is the kickoff day. They're going to have a kickoff at Westchester Lagoon. So in addition to that, we also have a traditional property tax coupon that goes out in the mail for people that pay their property taxes. We want to retain that program as is, so no changes. Finally, with you recall back in the day, we used to do a free dump day, and it was very burdensome. The lines were very long. And then fast forward COVID, we wanted to spread it out and make it so that it was easier and more, I don't know, just less population at once, I guess, at the different facilities. So we did coupons on Eventbrite, and it was a first come, first serve for $20. That's the program we'd like to change. So what we would like to propose, what we're going to do, the team came up with, was we looked at our mission and our vision and really what can we do to make a clean city. And so we propose offering 2,500 free dump coupons that could incentivize that kickoff event. And so people can come to the kickoff event and get their free coupon and clean up greenways instead of individual properties necessarily. But we definitely have a lot of shared spaces that need cleaned up, and our team felt like this would be a great opportunity to sort of clean up those different green spaces while still being able to incentivize people for getting involved. And I have not floated this with the chamber yet, but it was just an idea that the team wanted to roll around with you and have a conversation no PowerPoint today. I just really would love your input.
All right, Mr. Constant.
Thank you. I didn't hear any mention of the supports that generally go to community council cleanup. And so what's happened in the past is some of the haulers have volunteered their time and hauled a container or two, and then they've gotten free tipping.
Yeah, so through
Is that still part of the plan?
yes, through the chair, Mr. Constant, yes. Those commercial haulers are still all lined up and queued up and ready to go, so no changes there.
Thank you.
Ms. Bronga.
I'm sorry if you said this, but I was just wondering, I think last year there was some drama over how long the coupon was good for. So this year, the coupon that's in the tax, is it good for the year, or what's the time frame those coupons will be good for?
And that's a very good question. I think the intent is to do it the same as it was done last year, because the key with that was that somebody, I don't know, I can't say, but somebody back in the day inadvertently made it so that the time frame spanned 2 years. And so the budgeting became a nightmare, trying to figure out how do you anticipate where to put the credits and the funding. So it'll be all in the same calendar year.
And then I've been having some conversations with Brad Muir about trying to get, instead of having the Trail Watch program, instead doing some sort of kickoff that we all own our parks and our trails, and as part of that, possibly having an adopt a park or adopt a section of trail. I'm kind of wondering if these free dump coupons would be, if someone is taking on a section, maybe that would be a good incentive for them, then they can get rid of what they clean up on there. But I'll keep you in the loop if we get further along on that.
So through the chair, Member Bronca, I would say that I would encourage those folks that if they do want to do that, that would be a perfect place, is to have them show up at Westchester to get those free coupons. And that incentivizes the population to get out. And we know we definitely had a lot of feedback from the community that this dump coupon was really important. So sounds to me like this is a great way to incentivize participating in that event.
Thank you. I have myself in the queue. I'm a little bit worried about it being a one shot to get the coupon. If you're not available that day, you just miss out. And right, we know, particularly with community councils or different groups, they're volunteers. And if they don't know, right, that, and it's around the corner, so they haven't had a chance to like clear their calendars. So I think it's a great idea. I'm just wondering if doing it in implementation this year makes sense, or if we should like hold and have some time to reset the expectation.
And Chair Zalatel, really, we agree with you, and that's the reason why we have a very robust campaign for outreach going to happen very quickly. I needed to talk to you about it. And then also the different Chamber of Commerce and other community members can also participate. We could also do the FCC alert. So
But you're telling me, if I'm understanding, that in order to get the coupon, you have to be at Westchester. And that would happen in a couple of weeks. And right, like that's, to me, that seems way too short. And as a body that is always being told we're moving too fast, government is always moving too fast. There's some irony in that. I can see the outcry, because we didn't even get this notice enough to do a whole community council cycle where we could even be out there like educating our constituents about it and otherwise. So I guess it's a caution that there might be some considerable consternation, especially someone who really values this, has already been working and is expecting to be able to have that ticket, knowing that it's going to change on them. And also, like, there wasn't even a chance possibly to get it out with a cycle of bills, right? Of like potential trash bills or any other way that people might be looking at for information, typically from solid waste services. Again, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm just trying to figure out how we meter community expectations. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Have you looked at what the expected change to your cost would be from this program shift?
I think it's probably going to be about half of the coupons out of that program. So 2,500 out of 5,000. So because before it was free on the Eventbrite, first come, first serve, but it was a nightmare on the software side trying to figure out duplicates and registrations and with the software. That's why we're going old school. We're going to print out these tickets and we're going to number them and hand them out that way. So if there's another idea for distribution, if you think we need to do it at a different place, or a few different events to incentivize, we're open to that.
So to make sure I follow you, then what you're saying is you think there be essentially half as many people taking advantage of the opportunity to dump with a coupon, and so it's just sort of that number multiplied by the cost of each of those dumpsters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a rough estimate of what that?
$20 times 2,500.
All right, so 50,000.
Okay.
Thanks.
And really, with that, just so you know, it's really about tying it with the behavior and incentivizing more of that community feel and cleaning up those community green spaces.
Is there any possibility, one way to get visibility into something is through an assembly resolution? We have a meeting on Tuesday. You have missed the addendum deadline. However, if it is going to occur before May 7th, otherwise we have a May 7th meeting, that would be possibly one way where to find more information, email, whatever. So you might want to work with the administration there to see if there's some opportunity there to help further broadcast, what it is you're trying to do if this is the direction you're going. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, I have a kind of bigger picture question that I think doesn't have an answer right now, but I'd be curious kind of your thoughts. And so I understand the idea of incentivizing and that people appreciate the free dump coupons, right? But I'm also thinking about the situation that just happened in Matsu, right? Where people said, oh, this is great. Let's just let's make it a free for all essentially. And then it was a massive hit to the budget. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, how do we better connect the idea of, encouraging people to clean up the city with the idea that it's not just about getting something free to do it, right? I mean, so that idea and so I don't know if there's a way to, and I understand, I really appreciate the partnership of the Chamber of Commerce. They've been a great partner over the years, getting folks to do this, and then others who volunteer and put groups together in community councils. But anyway, all that to say, I just wonder, at some point, how do we just help the community say, pick up your trash, right? I mean, because there is this irony of we live in probably the most beautiful state in the union, and yet people, throw trash out the window, and we have to have these signs that say, don't trash Alaska, right? So I just wonder, at what point do we have that conversation with the community, and how can we as assembly members help with that? Because I know it's hard for you as the SWS person to wield that hammer or whatever it is. But I just want to raise that, because honestly, it feels like at some point we shouldn't be giving away things for free to get people to take care of our stuff.
Through the chair, I agree 100% with you, and whatever we can do, I'm speaking for myself, and we do value that partnership, and you all do represent all your different neighborhoods, and so you do have that multiplier effect, and that's why we appreciate having this conversation so that we can make a plan and do some different things, and we'll have lots of other programs and things to talk with you about next. But
Yep. I'll throw out one more idea as you're thinking through things. My husband and I actually reached out to the chamber on behalf of Rogers Park Community Council a couple of years ago saying, is it possible to do a fall cleanup before the snow flies? Like get the trash up before it's buried. And they didn't have the capacity at the time, but there's another potential idea. So if we do it more, in some ways, we might be able to work that behavior, take a look around what's on the ground, get it up before it's buried. Because a large part of what we're cleaning up is stuff that may have likely existed before the snow just buried it. So any other, Ms. Bronga.
I just took a peek on the chamber website, and they've got free dump pass coming soon. I know that was a confusion last year because of what was said on a website. So maybe just ixnay the free dump pass coming soon. Or be really specific of where that
Yes.
can be.
All right, anything else for solid waste services? We appreciate the conversation and the exchange of ideas for sure. All right, with that, we don't have a stormwater utility update, legislative priorities, none right now. Again, and I owe Mr. Littlefield the email. Be sure to check Claire's email that she sent around, kind of telling everyone where capital priorities are. Budget items, we will save for tomorrow. With that, audience participation. Yep, please come on up. So once you're at a mic, before we turn to audience participation, Mr. Constant?
I want to let folks know, we added a work session for tomorrow morning on an alternative proposal to the Eklutna River conversation with a visit with the native village of Eklutna.
Yes, it's at 10 o'clock. Hit your calendars late. We do know that there are possibly some conflicting things, but as always, it'll be recorded so that you can take a look at it. So with that, hi. Mike, great. State your name, what part of town you're from, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Dylan Faber, Community and Government Affairs Manager for Matson. Great to be here with you all. And just want to give a quick update from Matson's perspective on where we're at with the PAMP and some of the different agreements you all heard about today. First of all, I think Assemblyperson's Altel hit it on the nail on the head. We're really excited for where this project's at. The team down at the port, Jacobs, they're doing fantastic. The plan of finance, they're doing a fantastic job. Everybody's hitting their deadlines. Things are moving along, and we've got a lot of confidence in the project and their collaboration with us as we're reviewing the different designs for Terminal 1. So that's been excellent to see, and we really appreciate the Assembly support from all of those different perspectives and the things that are coming across your table. You guys are keeping moving quickly. As it relates to different agreements, we're in the middle of kind of the preliminary negotiations on those three different, or the interface agreement, what's being called, and the crane use agreement. We're also expecting a third agreement, which is going to be the crane use agreement, which will govern the crane use after day one of it becoming commissioned. I preface kind of what Allison and Bennett's presentation was, is kind of that's what their goal is for the municipality. We've also got goals for Matson within these negotiations. And so what they might have presented isn't going to be what's final there. It's going to be both parties collaborating, coming together, and coming up with a solution that protects the municipality, protects Matson, and makes sure that everybody's delivering a project that meets Alaskans' needs. I mean, this is a mega project, and it's in everybody's best interest to get as far along as we can. It's important to think or remember these agreements are in place to manage expectations, then also in case something goes wrong. And I think it's everybody's goal to avoid things going wrong. And it's our perspective that we have confidence in the project team, and we're looking forward to the contract getting awarded and getting construction underway. Last thing I'll add is the timing on these agreements is critical. Purchasing these 3 gantry cranes is going to be probably about $100 million investment from Matson. And so in order for our board to move forward with that investment, we've got to have some sort of agreements in place. We're very confident where we're at with the municipality on those. And so I'll be working with Eric to make sure we hit timelines as much as we can, be flexible where we can, and make sure we're getting things to you all as fast as we can for approval. So that's where we're at. And as always, please feel free to reach out with any questions on where things stand. Thank you.
Great. I have a question for you, Ms. Brawley does. That notice to proceed of October 2024, is that timeline working for Matson right now in terms of its procurement for cranes?
So what's critical to us is there's about a 30-month lead time on cranes. It's ideal that we get them ordered sometime in June to be able to have 3 cranes delivered here, and by July 2027.
Okay, well, I think we have a misalignment on timing identified, because it will not, the approval of those agreements, right? We won't even have our bids back to attach the agreements to. So I'm going to ask you all to put your heads together and figure out what might make sense there.
We've already started.
Okay, great. And the crane use agreement is something we had requested from legal to see as part of the package. So I think you all have a lot of work to do. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate the feedback on kind of how things are going. And it sounds like good news, notwithstanding the timing issue there. it would be helpful, and it wouldn't have to be right now, but if you could provide a brief kind of written status update, because I think the other thing is we want to keep our legislators informed and our congressional delegation, and I know you guys are also in contact with those folks as well. So I guess if you do make communications, please share them with us. And then also we just want to make sure to assure everybody that things are moving along, because we know that that's the case, and of course folks are busy and they don't always keep up with what's going on. So if we can just make sure that communication happens. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Positives from our perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, that written communication, if you send it to Ms. Brawley as the legislative committee chair, that would be really helpful. And then she can make sure we have those talking points as we continue to engage with both the state and federal delegation. Yeah, or all members, up to you.
Certainly.
Anybody else? Questions while we've got them here? All right.
Excellent.
Thank you, Dylan.
Appreciate you all.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? We are early for the first time, I think, ever in EUOC. All right. Let's hope that just holds for the day. With that, we'll be adjourned till budget.